Hello again, everyone. I would like to officially welcome you to Stop Searching, Start Finding, using your brain for file management. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today.
And before we get started, it's only fair that we sort of pay homage to kind of where we are in the past. And the whole idea of file management on our desktops, on our phones, on the cloud, it doesn't quite matter where we are. We seem to be stuck with these as a metaphor, folders. And you can have lots of folders. But the problem with these folders is you put something in this folder, and it can't go in this folder. Now, we actually parallel this metaphor on our computers. And of course, this is an industrial age metaphor. The filing cabinet was invented centuries ago. It was a great system for physical objects, paper, because this piece of paper here only exists in one place. However, with a file on your computer, it can be in multiple places and have multiple connections. But unfortunately, our folder system, other than creating shortcuts, doesn't enable us to see that multidimensional categorization. And I know, Matt, you also have strong feelings about file management. So before I get into the brain in file management, I'll let you chime in on your perspective as well.
Absolutely, and the filing cabinet has not gone away by any means. In fact, I have mine right here. If I can just tilt my camera down a bit, you can see here's my trusty filing cabinet at my side. So it's never left the side of my office. Still there, still in great use. The only difference is now it's holding these cords. In fact, it's a relic holding other relics, old iPhones and boxes and cases and things of that nature. The one thing that I not keep in my filing cabinet are files and documents. Those are all stored in the brain for many different reasons. And Shelley actually touched base on one important component, is that with the brain, we can actually see all the different relationships our files have. So rather than a typical file and folder type structure, whether it's on your desktop or sitting next to your desk, we can actually see the multitude of relationships and visualize those in the brain. And we'll be highlighting those features in today's webinar.
All right, great. And with that, we invite you to close your folders and open your mind. And we're going to start to cover how you can move beyond the linear file folder directory structure and create a network of connections. And in real quick, in fairness to the file folder system, I'll show you a digital version. So here again, I'm doing client management. Now you can see what it looks like on my file system, where I've got a directory, and it's a path essentially to where that wants to be stored. And that there's nothing wrong with that path. The problem is these paths can get very deep, especially if you're on shared network files, you're collaborating with people. And of course, something in one industry, I have a client, Time Warner. They're in telecommunications. We're also doing certain services. I can't really put them in two places. I can create a shortcut between folders, but I can't see those connections. And so if we just contrast that to the brain, we can see quite easily, and here's my telecommunications folder, how much more information you can see with the brain. So I'm going to go ahead and close this and focus on making these connections and embedding your file in a semantic network of meaning, not with just connections, but you can also add a note, you can add a tag, you can add a type, all the thought properties and meaning that you ascribe to a thought. Essentially, these are things that you imbue your file with to help you find it. And of course, we combine that with a fabulous search. So it's not just about navigating to your files. You can certainly have instant access to those files with search. So let me just start from the top here. For those of you that are new to the brain, pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. So clicking on a thought triggers all related pieces of information. Now, I don't want to say that we can't subcategorize information and everything's just, associatively connected. We absolutely, in starting your brain, I do encourage you to build out sort of that basic hierarchy. And in some sense, drilling down or navigating childward in a brain is not unlike sort of drilling down a file path. But the advantage of the brain is you can move beyond that file path, or to use that, talk about file paths, two file paths can connect. So for instance, I'm in my business. I can go everything below my business. If this were a file folder system, these would be subfolders, of course. In the brain, they're thoughts, and of course, they can do a lot. You can do a lot more with a thought than a folder. But just so we're, clear, if you're just coming from a strict file management background, so you can orient yourself to the brain. So clicking on any thought triggers all related pieces of information. So I've got my siblings' thoughts that share the same parent, or that would be directory folder if you're in a folder system, appear to the right. And then we have something called jump thoughts. Jump thoughts are related to your active thought, but they're more of an associative connection. So I've got all my different clients listed right here under clients. And you can see I actually have, we'll get into this, thought types. I've got some thought tags with the icon appearing, and of course attachments to each one of these thoughts. But to the left, these are what would also be subcategories or subdirectories of clients. But what I wouldn't be able to have in my folder directory is this jump thought, where I can immediately say, oh, Jack, he's a SVP of services. Let me go over to Jack's universe and see who he's managing. So I can move into a nice view of a people network quite easily in combination with managing my files. So I'm going to go into telecommunications, where we saw that file directory earlier in the Windows folder directory I had, and click on Time Warner. Now, clicking on this thought triggers all related pieces of information. So I'm constantly presented with the most relevant information. Now, a couple things that are interesting about the brain is this one piece of information is effectively located under multiple categories. So this client of mine, Time Warner, we're providing knowledge management services for them, but it's also in the telecommunications industry. So I don't have to decide in the brain, do I want to store this, these documents on my client in my telecommunications folder? Do I want to store them in my services folder? I can effectively do both without duplication, and I can see those connections just the way I make them in my head. That's the way they're going to appear in your brain. And now let's talk specifically about how the brain works with these files. So if we look in the content area below, and first of all, this is your thought display. Below that, we have the content area. You can actually come in here and have your content displayed below. That's my preference. The default on the Brain 9, which a lot of people like with these larger monitors, is to display it to the right. That's sort of a preference for you. But you can see both in the visual user interface as well as the content area that I have 6 attachments to the thought. So that's the other thing that's quite interesting. A lot of people might think, oh, I can only attach one thing to a thought. Well, it's up to you. In some cases, if it's an idea or it warrants a specific thought, like this presentation on this PowerPoint, this is just one attachment, so it just has the number 1 in the interface, and I've got a little preview on what that is, and of course, I can launch that file. And I can see all the details if I click on the content window. So that's one attachment. Time Warner, this particular thought has 6 Word documents, and the reason it has 6 is because I actually do version control and versioning in the brain. And of course, I can open any one of these attachments just by clicking on. I can see all the different attachments here. So there's version, actually I even have another version called 7, even though there are 6 attached. That's why it's showing 6. And I can go to any one of these attachments just by clicking on that. So if I want to go ahead and launch version 2, I can just click on version 2 of this document, and I've gone ahead and opened this, and it will open it it will launch the application. If you are on a Mac for the Brain, you'll actually get a content preview, and I can also preview as well just by clicking on that preview button. PDFs will automatically preview, so this is quite nice as well. So if I come to this spot and just want this document preview in my content area, I have that as well. But the other thing that's great about managing files in the Brain is I can have notes. So I have extensive notes. I use the notes area to actually comment on different versions. I'll actually cut and paste paragraphs on stuff that I maybe some resource text that I might add in version 6 of the document. So it's very easy to come in here and see everything that's going on. And likewise, just to show you another area, you can actually take the documents that you're working on and create what I call a pin. So if I want to come back to this thought, I'm going to set a pin. So now I've got these 6 versions of my client regardless of where I went. So maybe I'm in marketing resources right here, or I'm in my business expansion, but I can always get to those 6 documents simply by creating a pin. Now, the other thing that I can do, of course, is I can start a search. So if I want to just start searching for marketing, I just type in the first couple letters of search, and I can move to these marketing resources. Now, of course, marketing resources can also be web pages. So you can attach a path to a thought, whether it's a URL or even a path to where that file lives on your directory. So I'm going to click on Pragmatic Marketing. And what you'll see here is the Brain has a built-in web browser that's actually going to show that web page. Now, again, I can click to launch this in a separate URL. So if I actually click on the thought, that's going to launch this URL. So you can see Pragmatic Marketing launching a separate URL. But if I just click on the thought itself, this is a nice way to offer a content guide on files and URLs. So I can actually, it'll just be framed in this Brain area, and I can still see how it relates to marketing resources as well as other stuff. And I've got Fast Company. These are just my favorite marketing sites, and it all comes together really nicely in the Brain. And of course, the great thing about that is if you have an article on the human, in the Brain or in your marketing section on human mind and usability, I can go ahead and make another connection to usability, which I actually do have a section in my Brain on usability trends. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this article that would have otherwise been sitting in my favorites on my browser in a folder to an area in my Brain on usability trends. And this takes me into a whole new section on future trends in my Brain. So I've moved very quickly from marketing to future trends by having all these interesting thoughts and this ability to connect one idea to something else very quickly. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into my active projects area and go into my writing area. Now, again, you can see how I've got things organized in this particular Brain specifically for file management. I'm going to stick to my writing projects and my client management sections in my Brain because this is where I do a lot of file addition. So I'm going to click on this area here in writing projects. And again, you can just see a host of documents. Now, as you're working on your files, and adding your files, don't forget about the wonderful notes area where you can actually create checklists on stuff you need to do. So these are all the different things I have to do for our company brochure. And I just put it right at the top for writing projects. And as I get things done, let's say that brochure is gone to print, I can check it and send it off. And of course, I can look at these different files. My company brochure file is right here. And I also want to show you how nice PDFs look in the Brain. And I'm going to flip this around because I actually like the old school view with the Brain on the top and the content on the bottom. And see, you can change things, and Matt probably has a different preference. And also, this particular area here, if you right-click in the Brain 9, I have my attachments as tabs. I can also set attachments as list. And the way that's different is that's going to show me anything that I have an event or as a note. So if I go back to that writing project's thought, I can see that note. And if I had any attachments here, here, I could see those. And in fact, what I can do is click on Add Attachment. So if I want to add an attachment, I can just go ahead and click on that Add Attachment button, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a Microsoft document on all my writing projects. I'm going to create a writer's plan for 2018. So this is my document, and I just added it to that particular file. I can actually go ahead and just save that file. Now you might be wondering, where do these files save? So you can see right here, each thought in the brain has its own unique URL where you can actually open that file, that thought folder if necessary. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that and close this out. And so I've actually just created a brand new folder in my brain. So now you can see I'm in a different, I sort of have the list view. So if I want to see my note here, I can see my note and I can see this file. I can actually come in here and add a few more files if I want that I might have on my desktop. So I've got my 2017 projects. Let me go into marketing here. And I've got a Google AdWords content that I have to do. And that will just go under new advertising content. So you can see I actually have two documents on that, but in this case, I actually also want to put the Google AdWords document in there. So I'm simply going to drag and drop this, and I can drop this on the thought, or I can drop it in the content area. It doesn't matter. So I'll go ahead and do that. And you can see it's taken that document and it's gone ahead and made a copy of it. And now I've got 3 attachments to that particular page. So I can come in here and really add all kinds of things to the brain. I can also copy and paste documents. So if I want to go ahead and grab a couple, I'm just holding down Control, and I'm going to right click and select to copy. And in this case, each of these files that I'm moving into my brain, I want to have a separate file or thought names in my brain. So I'm just going to right click and select to paste these files. And now you can see that I've got that AMA Handbook of Business Writing. And you can see what that looks like. Let me go back to our default view, which is actually our attachments as tabs, because that gives us a nice preview right away. So you can see I've dragged and dropped that PDF in, and or rather, in this case, I copied it in. I could have dragged and dropped in, but I wanted to show you how to copy 2 files at once. How easy that is. That was pretty easy, right? You know, here's that PDF, and it's looking really good. The other thing that I can do is if I really just want to focus on this document, I can just make the plex go away. I just click on this little slider here, and I can continue, or if I want to go full plex, so I've got full plex view here, I can do that. And of course, with full plex view, I can add distant thoughts, or you know, really go ahead and change my layout. Or I just click on, and hopefully you can see this. It's a tiny little arrow there. Or I can go ahead, have the half view is kind of what I like when I'm focusing on knowledge management, because I want to see my visual map or guide of all my files and the content below. This is what most users do. That being said, though, if I'm ready to just look at this document, of course, I can launch it and it'll open it in its native application, or I can just maximize the document and go ahead and do that. And the other thing that's cool about this is we are such a great note-taking app as well. It's almost because we have such a great user interface and file management, people forget what powerful notes we have. I won't focus too much on that, but I can write this handbook should be shared with all members of the marketing team. And I'm just making a note on different things in this document that make a lot of sense to me. And this is where I could also go back to that list attachments list view and start, you know, looking at things as well. So let me just go ahead and show you the brain. And I want to spend a little bit more time on dragging and dropping content. Let me go back to our standard view. You can see it's just really fun to go ahead and change. I had my distant thoughts showing, but I'll keep it real simple. So we're starting on file management. So if I want to go into my public relations folder and drag and drop anything, let me just activate public relations in my brain. So I just start typing in the first couple letters, and boom, I can move to that area very quickly. So It's very fast. And now what I can do, I have a fourth quarter press release. I'll go ahead and go into press release, my press release area. I can simply drag and drop that. And that's going to go ahead. And now I've got that document in my brain. My company fourth quarter press release is right there. And now that's great because I can go ahead and link this to anything else rather than it just being sitting in a particular folder. This file is actually related to the services we're performing at Time Warner. So I actually want to make a connection to that client. So I'm going to go ahead and link it to Time Warner. Double click there, and so now I've got our fourth quarter press release. Now the thing that's interesting too is I can decide what relationship I want to give between these two thoughts with link types or position in the brain. So for instance, this is not a project that we're doing with the client, but it is something we're doing with the company. So I'm actually going to go ahead and move fourth quarter press release as a jump. So it's just something that's tangent as a tangent. It's vaguely related to Time Warner, so I have it here. I don't need it as a big category below. Or the other thing that's kind of interesting is if Fred is the one that's doing that press release, or he's in charge, I can go ahead and now change that relationship and actually unlink it. Go ahead and unlink from Time Warner. So now I've just got it under the person that it's related to, as well as my press releases section. So again, rather than it just being nested in a folder, I've got this press release under, of course, press releases, so I can find it there. But I also have it connected to Fred, and again, I can come in here and take notes about who are our target media. Now here, I'm just getting a lot more intelligent access to this. The other thing that I can do is, this is quite an important thing for our company, is I can type or tag this file that I just dragged in because it's now represented as a thought. So I can set a thought type. I have thought types as current projects, cool projects, active projects. Let me just go ahead and make this a current project. And you can see it gets the nice color to it now with the tag. And with a type, and I can also set tags. Now, tags involve, for me, these are additional attributes that I can describe to a thought, and therefore the file that I'm working with. So in this case, this is maybe a high investment. Maybe we're spending a lot of money on this, and this is also something that we're doing in London. So I'm going to actually set a tag for London. So now you can see I've got two tags, a type, a note, and this file. So much information, so many different meanings to me that help me take it out of my head, put it in the system, as opposed to this, just the file. Just the file kind of sitting in this folder. Now we've really got some intelligence going here. Now, just in terms of discovery of files, I've shown you a little bit about search, but let's go back to those tags. So why would I tag it? What's the point of all this information, Shelley? Well, let's put it this way. Let's say, let me go back to my business expansion section. Maybe I'm not, thinking about that press release right now. Maybe months have passed and I'm busy focusing on my operations and maybe building planning now in the company. So I'm just going to, things are coming up though, I have a London trip. So I'm going to activate my tag. Now, a lot of people ask, why don't I create a thought? What's the difference between a thought and a tag? A tag is an attribute. Like, I don't want a thought in my brain called London trip, but I certainly like to tag things that I'm doing. So when I fly to London, I can just sort of, boom, activate this tag. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm booking a London trip. And so now I can see I've got several things tagged for my London trip, but I also have a London location. Those are the things I have to pack, in case you're wondering what the difference is between those two tags. It's very subtle, and that's the way it is in your brain. But here is everything that's tagged London. So I'm definitely going to be working on that fourth quarter press release. And you can see, because it's got the thought type over and above all this other stuff, it's actually appearing first in the color of that thought type too. So it's sort of elevated in terms of, wow, if I've got basically 8 different things I'm doing and I only have a second to look at my information, I can see pretty quickly that it's this fourth quarter press release that I'm going to be focusing on. But I also have some cool information here that I can look at. And the other thing that's great about this is, of course, when I bring up everything that's tagged, I can click on that item and it takes me to that domain of where it belongs. So my meeting with Steve about budget takes me into accounting, and of course I've got links to all other accounting stuff and so on and so forth. Now, in addition to sort of dragging and dropping files one by one, the other thing that you can do, of course, is file import. So I'm just going to go ahead and select, I'm in my active project area. Let me go back to my writing projects, and I can go ahead and go up to File. Well, first of all, before I do that, let me drag and drop this folder. I can simply drag and drop this. And what this is going to do is this is going to create a shortcut to that folder. And that's pretty powerful if you are working with a lot of shared folder directories, or of course, in this case, I have this folder sitting right on my desktop. But imagine you've got a folder that's really buried in a subdirectory. Just by dragging and dropping this folder, I've created that shortcut, and I can just go ahead and click on that, and it's going to launch where that is. Or actually, I'm sorry, this is actually going to bring this launch the folder and take the full folder and bring it into TheBrain. If I actually want to make it a shortcut, I can actually go ahead and enter the URL or the file link. Now that just takes the full folder and creates a thought. But if I want to go ahead and import this, let me just go ahead, and I'm actually going to go ahead and forget this, is equivalent to deleting in TheBrain, and I'm going to go ahead and I want to get all the subfolders mapped out as thoughts. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do a folder import. So let me go ahead and select import, and you can see we have a lot of importing options. And of course, I want to add it to my brain, to my writing. I don't want it in a new brain. I wanted to add it there, and I want to do a folder. And so I'm going to go here and select the folder. So the folder is my 2017 projects. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and import this. And it's going to say that it's undoable, and that's fine. So now you can see it's actually importing all my 2017 projects. And it's got, just like it does in this external folder, it's got 4 different subfolders. So here are the folders as well: customer service, marketing, and writing projects. And because I have another section called writing projects, I actually probably want to rename this 2017 past writing projects, just to have a unique name there. But you can see I've got 3 of those there. And that links to stuff, blog articles. This is all stuff that would otherwise kind of just be stuck in the folder. And so if you go into that marketing area, you can see all 5 of those attachments are appearing, all 5 of those documents are appearing attached to that thought. Now, let's say I do my folder import and I decide I want actually a separate thought for each of these documents. That's pretty easy as well. So all I have to do is drag up and drop that. And then I can go ahead and delete those. So what let me grab social media as well, and drag and drop them. And so that creates a separate thought. I don't necessarily then need them in this brain, so I can go ahead and delete that as well from the main thought, because I've now created separate thoughts for it as well. And I'll just do the same thing here. So now I only have 3 documents in that marketing thought, and I've got these separate thoughts. And this is pretty interesting because this also relates social media strategy to social media. So I want to go ahead and create a thought on my section on social media marketing. So I go ahead and I'm going to make a connection there, and that might even make more sense to my online advertising area in my brain. So I've just integrated all that information. Now, integrating URLs and paths to information. You can see I've done a bit of that here where I have stuff to pass That's the same principle holds true for URLs. So let me just go to my marketing resources thought, and I'll just go ahead and launch fastcompany.com. And I can actually go ahead and drag and drop any number of URLs in the brain. So maybe there's an interesting article, we'll go into the technology section on Fast Company, about Twitter. So this particular article, I'm going to go ahead and put this in my brain, and I actually want to put this under social media marketing because it's relevant to what's going on in the Twitter universe. So all I have to do is drag from the browser address window and drop this where I want in my brain, and you can see what it does. It actually takes the name of that, and I'm going to change this back to tab view because in tab view this is going to automatically open, and I've got that particular link in the brain, and I can continue to go ahead and grab information. I'll just stay on the site because it makes it a little bit easier here. Here's another interesting article. And again, I can simply take this, and this might make sense to put under clients, talking a little for client management. So I'm going to go to my client management thought, and let's just go to clients. And I'm simply going to take this URL and drag and drop it. Now, I still like using the drag and drop, and you can see now I've got this web page, the call to turn residents into partners in my brain. I can, of course, adjust the URL. If I just want to talk about the, call this an article on partnership, I can change the name, and I can give it a thought type and tag and so on. And of course, this favicon, which in this case is a black one, so it's not appearing that well, but you can see these other favicons appear, so you actually know all the time when you've gone ahead and added a URL to your thought, because those appear. Now, of course, I can do that the other way as well. If I want to just go ahead and link to a file, open a folder, enter a URL. So if I just want to put a new thought for, TheBrain.com, I can go ahead and do that and save that. And now I've got TheBrain.com URL appearing. So you can actually just type the URL in rather than dragging and dropping if you know that URL. But that's sort of the basics of adding files and folders as well as URLs and documents. And I think with that, I'm going to pass presenter over to you, Matt, so you can kind of take it a step further with some other information sources and file types.
We just had a very interesting question come in from Andy, actually. He's got some long file names and wasn't seeing them having multiple attachments on a single tab. So really quickly, I'm just going to, I've got my brain open to one of the clients that I'm working with. And notice over on the right in the content window, I'm going to right click and go back to the default, whereas your attachments are appearing as tabs. So with multiple attachments on the top, and if I add another attachment, these tabs will get smaller and smaller, so you're not seeing the full file name. So if you've got long file attachment names or multiple file attachments that all start with 2017 or something like that, and you don't want to see all those appear as the tabs, I'm going to right click and just switch my view in the content window to attachments as a list. Now the top is always going to be the notes, and the bottom are all of my file attachments. And there I can see the full thought name, Spectrum Purchases New Marketing Team for 2018. So another option that you have to really make the content best fit your environment. Now, the scenario that I'd like to demo for you today are the multiple different types of files that exist in the world today. Now, Shelley showed us earlier, we can drag and drop and bring in Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, all those local documents, PDFs, even links to web pages. Very, very easy to drag and drop those right into the brain. And once again, you can set up your brain to work best for you by going up to Options, and under Preferences, you can always click on the UI tab and specify when you're dragging and dropping, do you want to move, copy, or link files into the brain? So the brain will always follow those rules. Now, there's some shortcuts. I want to share those with you really quickly. I'm going to leave mine on copy drop files into the brain, but I just want to share with you, let's say I'm working on a new active project for my client, and I'm going to grab my website budget. Now, because my default in the brain is set to copy file into the brain, if I were to drag and drop, that's exactly what the brain would do, a new copy internally inside my brain. In this scenario, let's say I just want to create a shortcut back to that file. You don't need to go in and actually modify your default settings for the brain every time. There's some keyboard shortcuts that you can actually customize. So in this example, I'm on a Windows machine today. I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and drag and drop this website budget. And notice that that did not copy the file into the brain. The full path, this is obviously out on my desktop, but the full path is being displayed, and this is a shortcut. So there's keystrokes that I can utilize to override the default settings. In fact, there's keystrokes for practically every setting inside the brain. And once again, to get to those, just click on Options, go into your Preferences, and on the very final tab, the Keyboard tab, you can see this is where we've got just the defaults already set up for many actions within the brain, and you can customize and modify your own keyboard shortcuts. If you want a new keyboard shortcut for how you delete an attachment, I'll just simply do a search here and type in delete. So I can delete selections, I can delete whatever's appearing in the reports, or delete a thought, Control-Shift-Z to delete a thought, or change that to, if I type in something else, Control-Shift-B. So Control-Shift-B will now delete a thought, and I can go back into the brain and hover over website budget, Control-Shift-B, and it's going to delete that thought that I was highlighting, the thought that I was hovering over. Really, really easy functionality to best fit your scenario, whatever works best for you, customizable to fit your environment. So now let's go in and talk about those disparate information sources that I mentioned earlier. We saw all the internal attachments, web page drag and drops, but a lot of people these days are working in Dropbox, Google Drive, Evernote. There's a lot of other types of data sources or data storage locations. And even if you don't use them, you may have to interact with them from time to time. I work with a lot of people in different companies, working with their brain or with their products, and from time to time, if they need to send me a file, send me the disclosure information for their product, I get a link to Dropbox or a link to a Google Drive. So even though I use the brain instead of those other information sources, they're sent to me from time to time from other departments or other organizations. So I actually did install Dropbox, and so I do have Dropbox running. And here's what it looks like locally. So these are my local Dropbox files. Obviously, anything that I put into this directory when Dropbox synchronizes, that is going to show up online as well. So if for any reason I want to get some content rather, that I am syncing into Dropbox into my brain, there's a few different options that you have. Once again, we can drag and drop since I've got a local directory right here, just like I could a typical file. But I can also right click, because this is my Dropbox directory, I can right click. I have the option to copy the Dropbox link. So here's a materials research. I'm going to copy this Dropbox link and back into the brain. I right click and paste web link. And this gives me a nice link back to that online version. So once again, I mentioned earlier, you know, often I'm working with another company and they say, oh, you need the brochure, you need the documentation. Here it is. They send me this long convoluted Dropbox link. I need to keep track of that. Where am I going to keep track of that? I'm going to keep track of that in my brain. So I simply copy that link that I receive in an email, paste it right into my brain, and I've got easy access to that document that has been shared with me. And then I can go further, take that one step further and take notes in the brain. or add additional context and link it to all the different relationships that it may have. If I have Dropbox open, I can get to the share link from here as well. Let's actually, for this, rather than using Dropbox, now I'll switch over to Google Docs. So Google Docs behaves much the same way. In fact, I've got my Google Docs directory open. I could right-click, copy the link from there. Let's go from the online interface. So now here I am in Google Docs, and I've got a project outline. I'll just pick one of my documents. So this is a little media blitz that I'm putting together. Many different ways I could get this content into my brain. I could copy the content, paste it into notes. Maybe this Dropbox, or I'm in Google Docs now, this Google Docs link is going to be edited by other individuals. So I always want to be pointing to this one. Therefore, it's time to get the URL. Now, whether you're working with Dropbox or Google Drive, everything has they call it the share URL or the document. I think Dropbox called it, if you right click on a file, the Dropbox link. So you're always looking for link or the share URL. So here you can see I've got a share button, and I can also just right click and click on link a file, right click, and let me scroll down a little bit. Maybe it's not right there. Like I said, I don't use it too often. So here we go. File, edit. There's many different options here, but I am looking for the URL, copy URL. And I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it right off the bat. Maybe I'll just click on the share button. There, I should have done that in the first place. I click on share, there's the get shareable link. So they've buried that shareable link a little bit. Obviously, it appears up in the URL as well. So click on share URL link, there it is. I copy that to my clipboard or click the button, copy link. And what do we do back in the brain? We right click and we paste that link right in. Now notice that the brain actually, in this case, it named it Project Outline. For Dropbox, it just simply named it Dropbox. But when I mouse over, it tells me that's the Materials Research Excel spreadsheet. Those are the labels. Now this question came up as well. Someone had a question about adding additional information to the attachments or to the content in your brain. And that can also be done in labels. So not only can we link to the data, I can keep some notes about that data, but if I click on any thought or alt click on the thought that's not the active thought, I'm always going to bring up the thought properties display. And here I can actually add additional context, additional information about this document. So not only is this my materials research for my project, I just want a quick note that it's research research. So I have that as the label for the thought. You can customize and modify the label for any thought in the brain, and it's quite simply what appears when you mouse over that thought. But that information is also indexed as well. Quite often I use labels for synonyms or acronyms of words or products or projects that I'm working on. Keywords that you can do a quick search and find that content. So I'm looking for things that are in progress. I'll just type that into the search. And I've got quite a few. I've got some meetings where that was mentioned, a test in progress, and there's that Dropbox document. So I can click and go directly to that item, finding it from the actual label that I searched on. So a lot of different options that you have there. And finally, the last component that I want to share with you is different ways to get additional into the brain. We've got a lot of different import capabilities. And I really quickly want to share with you some of the basic documents that you use every day. Word, Excel, spreadsheets. Yes, you can link to those documents. You can also import that individual document into the brain. So I'm going to pick an Excel spreadsheet. I have a directory here with some sample Excel spreadsheets. And there it is. I'm actually going to open this document up. And you can see this particular document. I've got sort of an outline maybe of a project, but as long as it's formatted this way, every line down or column down and indented to the right, it's going to form a new thought. It's going to nest and form a structure of thoughts. Now, obviously, I can copy this content, paste it in the notes, so I can just drag and drop this document into the brain. In this case, I'm bringing in the content, and there's even some specialty items. Take a close look right now. Under William Morris, you can see I've got the pipe symbol, and then it says favorite. Down below, a plus sign and a URL, a dash, and some further notes. I'm going to copy this content, and in my brain, under this spectrum, I'll paste the image. Maybe we're going to be referencing in our marketing how to live green in today's world, whatever the case may be. Oh, I pasted that as an image. That's another option that you have. I'm going to right-click once again, paste as text outline. So anytime you have something copied onto the clipboard, the brain is trying to interpret what you want to do with that content that's currently on the clipboard. So in an Excel spreadsheet, I can paste it as an image, sort of a neat feature there. But in this case, I wanted to actually bring all of that content into my brain. So here, again, following the structure of the Excel spreadsheet, every line that was indented or column that was indented creates a new row of thoughts. So I've got green people that are currently alive, deceased, and we'll go down to William Morris. And all those subtle little features, the pipe symbol, that created a sort of break in the line. And so the word favorite that was behind it in a pipe appears actually as a label. The note, which was the dash, have nothing in your house that is neither beautiful nor useful. And then finally, the URL, the plus sign, that actually adds the web page as content for that individual thought. So many different options that you have, data bringing individual files or their content into the brains that you create. And if you ever have any questions, I realize we're just scratching the surface today of doing imports. If you ever have any further questions about other more detailed imports, please send us a note into support@thebrain.com. We've got many different file samples that we can share with you so that you can sort of see the structure of that data, how it's being imported, and apply that to your own data to start importing into your brain as well. And with that, I think we're coming up almost on the hour. So Shelley, are there any additional questions about anything that we've demoed today that we want to cover or review?
Yes, we actually have a number of questions. I just want to make sure, can you hear me okay? I think I unmuted myself, but
yeah.
Okay, excellent. We're going to move into the Q&A portion, and something just popped up from Stan, and this is actually a great, it touches on all the UI and content options we have. Stan asked, can one quickly preview notes simply by hovering your mouse cursor without clicking, like it used to work on earlier versions of the brain? So, and I wrote yes, it's in preference, UI, update content on hover. So if we want to show everyone, that is a useful feature actually. I'm glad he brought that up. If we want to show people that option as well in preferences, that would be great.
There you go. So I just turned that on my screen in the preferences on the UI tab, update content on hover. So now when I hover over Spectrum, I can see Spectrum notes and the content down below. If I hover over Dropbox, there's the Dropbox link, and etc. So any thought that I hover over, it actually shows that content notes or file attachments over in the content window. It's typically just a feature that I turn off, I believe, Shelley, for the same reason, just so that when we're going through a demo, if you're seeing the brain for the first time, if I happen to drag my mouse slowly across a whole series of thoughts, it's not refreshing, and slowing down the webinar. The content refresh and redraw would slow down the webinar. So we typically just turn that feature off, but very, very useful. And obviously, yes, of course, that feature is still there.
Yeah, so if you do like that feature, I think if you're using the Brain 9, that probably needs to be turned on. And Van wrote in about that you mentioned Evernote and would like to know how to interface with Evernote. I don't know if you have Evernote installed or if you just want to speak to that point. Okay, excellent.
Again, not a utility because I use the Brain. Evernote, oh, here, I had it open. It was on my other monitor. There it is. And so here's Evernote. You can see I've got just some silly sample documents in Evernote, but I can click on a particular piece of information. And when you right-click in Evernote, you will always have the option to copy the note link. anything with a unique URL can be copied and pasted into the brain or linked in some capacity into the brain. Evernote, no exception. I can copy the note link, and I'll go back into my Spectrum, right click, paste web link. And typically this happens with Evernote. It actually names the content welcome back. I'm not sure why they have their content linked that way. Obviously I can click and say link to Evernote document. So I can rename that and launch. And maybe it's because I'm not logged in online. So I'll click on continue and sign in. And there's my commercial spot for Time Warner. So very, very easy once again to just simply right click and copy note link and right click and paste into the brain. So simple process, but obviously you will have to go in and rename those spots.
All right, great. And Thomas has a question about search. Does search look inside Word, Excel, and PDF documents?
Absolutely. You may have noticed when Shelly and I do a search, if I just say, let's see, not document, it'll show up with all kinds of stuff. I'll do a search for the word power. Used that one before. So the first grouping of search results are going to be your thoughts, your links, and your events. We haven't even had a chance yet to talk about the timeline quite yet. But thoughts, links, and events, if it shows up on the thought, the actual link, the link notes, it'll show up in that first grouping. Down below are all of the file or thought notes and attachments. So I can scroll down. You can see anytime there's a paperclip, that's a file attachment, in this case, an Amazon server document that contains the word power. So there's the Word document. I can launch that attachment. That document itself, notice the word power is not in the note, not on the thought name itself, it's inside the document. So search in Brain 9 is using your Windows desktop search or Spotlight, which means the search is almost instant. As soon as you're typing in the thought name, it is being indexed by your operating system. Documents, the exact same thing. So as you're typing the document, it's being saved, again, by your OS. So we utilize Spotlight and desktop or Windows desktop search to make the search in the brain light and fast, and all of that internal content, it's text-based, it's being indexed and therefore searchable.
All right, and then just a little bit of time to talk about mobile. First of all, a lot of people were asking about making links to files rather than, dragging, dropping, or copying them in. And the only caveat there is, of course, if you are just linking to a folder and it's simply on your local hard drive or on the network and you have 3 computers, if you're on that third computer, you will simply have the link. You may not have access. So that is a factor. Somebody asked, would you recommend linking or storing internally? And, it depends, because one person wrote in, I have to do links. Otherwise, my brain would be huge. He's got huge file types. And in that case, absolutely. Some people have just network drives that they have to share. But that being said, for the majority of users, if you do want to sync to see your files on your phone, on that second computer, then store them internally. And that takes us to maybe talking a little bit. Somebody wanted to ask about, can I access my files online and on my mobile? And then as part of that question, I'm going to throw kind of 3 in at once at you, Matt. Austin was asking, for web pages, is there a function like on the desktop version, an inbox version on the mobile solution, so you can capture a URL from your phone into the brain?
Absolutely. So yes.
So lots of mobile. So talking a little bit about mobile, I'll just hand the ball over to you on mobile.
Sure. So let's talk about how you get the brain there and the advantages of moving data into the brain. When your internal content is located in the brain, and earlier I showed you, let me just grab this website budget, I'll alt-click again. So I've alt-clicked that in the brain to create a shortcut. This file is a shortcut. These are URL links, the project outline that's looking online, so that's going to be available when I open my brain online or from other machines. But this shortcut to a file on my desktop, when I open this brain online, it's going to be looking in C user's Mac and desktop. The path is not the same once it's online. So it's not going to be there. You're not syncing the file, you're only syncing the path. This thought opened from another device will say file cannot be found. So you're not going to lose anything. The file is still there on your desktop, and it'll work for you when you open it on TheBrain on your desktop. So the choice, once again, is yours, and you can do both. This is what I really like to highlight from time to time. I need a link to this file because other people are editing it, but I want my own link for when I'm working offline or working from home. So Website Budget is now going to have a nice little shortcut to the shared version that other people have access to. But then I'll drag and drop again and hover over the existing thought, 2 attachments on the same thought. One shortcut to the original, one my own internal attachment. I can, let me view this, just share with you another feature really quickly. Attachments as tabs, and I can preview this document. It's running local. This is the shortcut I'm previewing, but I can preview the internal attachment. I can also open this attachment from other devices. Now I'm going to take this Brain and I'm going to sync it to the Brain cloud. So I click on sync, and that'll kick the process. And while that is going, I'm actually going to open my browser, and we'll first take a look at this. Oh, there it is, way over there. And we'll first take a look at this Brain. So here I am on the Brain website, www.thebrain.com. I'm going to log in and view my Brains online through a web interface. So I'll log into my account, and you can see I've got a lot of different Brains for different scenarios. Here's my eSolutions Consulting Brain. I can click and launch this Brain online. So everything that I've added into my Brain, even today, if I go under Spectrum and click down into the See the World ad campaign, there's that Dropbox link, my green people with all those mapped out. Everything I put in there today, it's synced. I'm now online viewing this information from a web browser. And I can click and continue on add new attachments, new documents down below, etc. So I can continue on modifying the Brain. Let's take that one step further. Now I am logging in from my mobile device. So once again, I can go mobile, and let me just get over to my
And while
Brain.
Matt's logging in, I'll just say a little bit about our new mobile apps. They are now offline capability. It doesn't require an internet connection. So if you're a field service agent and want to access your Brain remotely, you don't have the internet connection, with our new TheBrain 9 app, that is absolutely possible. So go ahead on the iTunes store and download that. And likewise for Android, they are native applications. And even though most of the time you will have the internet connection, that's great. You don't need it with our native apps. There it is.
So there, I clicked on the wrong, I saw the wallpaper, I clicked on the wrong Brain. But once again, you can see down below, all of the buttons are there to add new thoughts. Oops, I'm adding a new thought right now. I can click to add notes and file attachments. There's the sync button, if you can see it. So we can sync from our mobile devices now. So it's telling me no changes to sync. I just synced. And the question came up earlier, how do we get content into the iOS app? And Shelly's showing you now.
I'm copying you, Matt. Here I go. You're pulling out your phone. I got to pull out mine here. Add to Brain. So that's just like when you forward, just like when you would, you click the little forward icon on, I think hopefully if you're on an iPhone, if Android syncs.
The share. It's technically called the share icon.
Oh, okay. Yep. Right. Very good. So the share, it's just right. Okay, this is hard. It's like looking in a mirror.
It is.
Anyway, if you guys are using Dropbox, ours is right next to Dropbox. It's kind of the bottom utility area. So let's just add to Brain. So that's where it is. Because I use it all the time.
Yep. I did this just the other day with a video on refurnishing mid-century modern furniture. So there's the share button. I click on share, and I get my options down below. And there's share. Oh, it just closed. Share with the Brain. So share with the Brain button is going to be there. There's no setup. As soon as you install the Brain 9 on your iOS device, you'll be able to open up web pages, videos, what have you, into your Brain. So now I just clicked that. If I open up the Brain and go to add an attachment, I'll have the option to grab that video So here I am back in the brain, and I say, all right, I'm going to add an attachment. And you can see I've got a little 1. That means I've got something waiting for me in my inbox. And there it is, how to refinish mid-century. So the video that I just set up is waiting for me to add to the appropriate thought in the brain in my inbox. So some great features in the mobile devices now as well.
And we are on the hour. We are probably going to end the session in just a couple minutes here, but Johnny wrote in wonderful stuff, taking notes as fast as I can. Can I get a copy of this so I can watch it several times? Yes, Johnny, and to everyone, we apologize if we've moved too quickly in certain areas. It's kind of funny because the advanced users are like, wow, get to the good stuff, and the beginning users are like, wow, what's going on? So we do have a recording of this. It's published the next day. It's always on our homepage. And actually, just by signing up as an attendee, whether you attend or not, you're going to get an email of that link the next day. So you'll actually be emailed the link to that. And yes, so we do have recordings on our site. And then secondly, for those of you that maybe you're still creating that basic structure of the brain, and you want to see a little bit more basic session, I want to encourage you to join our Brain 101 classes hosted every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern by Matt, who's fabulous. Matt creates a brain from ground up. So if this was like, wow, this is too much information, take a step back, join the 101 classes. Those classes are great for advanced users too, if you even want to just come in at the end and throw Matt a bunch of questions. And speaking of questions, we did chat most of the answers. We're not going to be able to necessarily articulate each question and answer because we covered so much ground, but that's where on the 101 classes, in addition to getting your answers chatted, Matt will actually demo pretty much every single question due to smaller class size. So definitely go ahead and sign up for that. And some people were asking about file limitations on the server with 30 gigabytes. We actually have users who have more. So if you're in a situation where you need more space, right into support or sales, we can absolutely let that happen for you. The file size, overall file size is almost more just so you're not, using it as a YouTube hosting site or anything like that. But we do have clients that have exceeded that and we're fine with, or we've worked out solutions for them. So do write into support if you're worried about anything more space on our server, and we can work with you on that. Okay, and I think we've covered a lot of ground. Just one more quick question before. It's kind of an interesting question from Van. Can you link to an executable such as Python program that you've created?
Oh, sure,
talking
absolutely.
About other file types, like just an executable.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think this is a different machine. I recently installed Notepad++. So I just want to be able to, from the brain, launch that exe. And so obviously you can just simply, again, make that shortcut. So if I go into this PC and I go into my programs, I don't have Python here, but I'm sure I've got, let's say I want to get into Adobe, Photoshop. There's got to be an exe in here somewhere. No, there's not.
It's basically a shortcut, right? Or
Exactly.
Yeah.
If this were an exe, this is a DLL file. But again, I would just Alt-click and bring that shortcut in. In fact, I can launch the brain from its shortcut on my desktop.
Matt's not giving up on this one.
There we go. So I'll actually launch the brain from the brain. So absolutely, you can. It already knows the brain is open, so it's not launching the brain again. But regardless, you can just simply bring in that shortcut to that exe, launch it right from the brain.
Okay, and an important question came in earlier, and we might close the session on this final question from Andy. And he mentioned that he wants to get a nice overview of the brain. He finds this our standard view just a tad limiting. And he usually works with mind maps where he can see more connections. Maybe we could cover showing distant thoughts, outline, and our new mind map view as well, just so people can see.
Absolutely.
You know, we have been staying in the basic view because we're focused more on files, but in terms of visualization, there are plenty of options, and we'll cover some of those real quick.
Great. So I'm going to start with giving myself the best possible real estate. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually minimize the notes, and on the splitter bar that separates the Plex from the notes, click on the little arrow, little shortcut to minimize the notes. They're still there. I can click the arrow to bring them back. But right now I'm just focused on the Plex, all of the interconnected thoughts. The first view that I'll share with you is just the simple expanded view, the basic expanded view. I click the plus one time, and I'm now viewing 2 generations away from the active thought. So I can not only see that Spectrum has an active project called See the World, I can see below there's a Dropbox document, a link to Evernote, pasted image, green people, et cetera, those documents that I created earlier today. So I'm 2 generations away from the active thought. Now I'll take us to another view, which is called the outline view. So notice the little cluster of thoughts icon there. Take me from normal to outline view. And outline view is a very linear structure, and it really depends on how much screen real estate you have. I'm broadcasting at a very low resolution today so that the screen keeps up with what I'm talking about. But if you've got a larger monitor, a larger screen, high resolution, you can really fit a lot of thoughts on the screen at one time. And you can also adjust. I'm going to go up to the text size slider and scroll down and up to get my thoughts to just the right size. And you can see even this view, there's quite a bit. So if I want to minimize anything, notice when I hover over, I'll have a little plus and minus side. So I could minimize green people or expand. So it's actually collapse and expand buttons. And See the World, I'll collapse that. So I can really sort of decide how much of a particular branch I want to expand out and visualize at any time. And then finally, I'll go from the outline view into our mind map view. Very standard mind map view. Notice I can click in the background to move the structure of thoughts around. And once again, if there's something I really want to expand and explore, I can click the expand button at any time to view that content. So it's up to me really to decide how far out I want to expand. And of course, I can just keep moving this over and expanding more thoughts further and further as I go. And at any time, finally return back to the normal view.
Looking good. I love those link types, Matt, and your wallpaper. It looks pretty nice.
Yeah, and those are all adjustable customizations that you can do to really make the brain fit your personality or the content of the brain that you're creating. Something very sleek and modern for a business brain, or just kind of fun and whimsical for a brain about your hobbies and personal interests. It really can reflect the data itself, the thought types that you create, the icons that you assign to thought, and the wallpaper that you choose. All customizable. And that, of course, if I go to options and into brain theme, that's where I can select from different existing brain themes in the brains that I create.
Nice. And then Joseph had sort of one basic question. I just want to get this in because I'd hate for him to leave without us covering, or anyone to leave without understanding this. He says, can you demo URL, drag and drop and paste? He can't quite get that working. So maybe we can show dragging and dropping from the address browser. I might have done that to a couple of those. And then also just going in and copying and pasting a URL through the content window so people see both those 2 options for attaching URLs, because TheBrain, oh man, is so fantastic for managing those URLs and all your web pages. And it's great to create content guides. I want to make sure everyone walks away knowing how to do that properly. And Joseph, after that, if there's everyone, you should know, obviously, we have free technical support to all users, so feel free to chat through us on the website, or call us, or write into support, and we're always happy to help you out and get you answer any question you have, both technical or otherwise.
Great. So I'm just opening up some random web pages that I have here. And let's say I want to bring these web pages. I'm doing some research for a new web design for my client. So I want to bring these into TheBrain. Drag and drop from the URLs. One of my favorite features of the application and favorite uses of TheBrain. I never keep track of, and I always stress this in my Brain 101 classes as well. I never keep track of my favorite web pages or web pages that are important to me in my browser bookmarks or favorites. I'm not always in the same browser. I'm not always on the same machine or in the same location. And if I save it in IE, the next day, sure enough, I'm going to be on my Mac. I'm in Safari. Where's that website I really like? I can't get to it. So it always goes into my brain. And my brain is synced between any device that I have access to. And also, that information is saved in context. Here I'm doing research for the layout of a web page for a client. I don't want this content mixed in with my own personal favorite web pages or web pages that I'm reviewing for designs for other projects. So I'm just going to minimize the browser here and notice that I can just grab the icon in the address bar. So just go to the address bar of your browser. I'm using Chrome, works in IE, Firefox, Safari, all sort of the juggernaut browsers that are out there. We can simply click and drag, and it looks like this URL I've brought in before, so I'll just add it in again underneath web research. So not only that, the brain knows, wait a minute, you've got a link to this website somewhere else. I could have just linked to the existing thought. In this case, I just want it linked to this new thought underneath web research, and I'll grab, so I probably demoed with these specific web pages in the past. So let's see if this does the same. I'll click and drag. And yes, so it's navigate to the existing attachment. I'll just add it in again. And the great thing about bringing it, again, into TheBrain, it's saved in context. So these are web pages I'm researching just specifically for this project. But also, if I'm using my brain for a demo, I can actually just click and what does this web page look like? What is it I like about it? It's going to load up right there in the content window. I don't even need to have the URL on. If it's animating, which this one is, it's animating right there in the Brain's built-in browser. And unfortunately, even opening up the pop-ups that are built into that web page as well. So very easy to get that content in, and it's just a really, really great place to keep track of all of your favorite web pages in your brain. I always demo that in my own personal brain on Brain 101 every Friday, just to show you that my brain is made up of 99% web links because I live online. So if I've got a web page I'm interested in for my own personal hobbies and interests, into the brain they go.
All right, great. And then finally, as far as our versions of the software, we do have a free version. Our trial is absolutely free for 30 days. Most of the features that we've talked about today are going to fall very strictly in the Brain Pro camp because with free version, you can add files and web pages and create free web guides and use the Brain with your notes and your URLs. But if you actually do want to continue with file management, you can purchase a license for $219 or go for the web services and license combo for $299, where you get all the file management features as well as the ability to sync across multiple machines and cloud backup and free upgrades and all kinds of fun stuff. So I just wanted to make that clear to people who are still on the trial. With file management, you definitely want to think about upgrading to either Pro or the Brain Combo license. And with that, we are going to close today's session. I want to thank you all for joining us. And Matt, any other final tips or tricks on file management or final words of wisdom before we close our session today?
I do want to highlight that everything that you do in the Brain can be modified and can be edited. So if you feel like, oh, I'm dropping all of my content into the Brain, maybe I should have changed these to web links, or maybe I've got all these web links. I didn't realize I could change the default and bring those internally into the Brain. You can still go back and make those changes. So everything that you do in the Brain can be edited and modified. So have no fear. Start bringing it into the Brain and syncing to the cloud. You'll see how easy it is to create a Brain and keep track of all your files and all of your data.
Yeah, good point. It is a living, breathing knowledge network with links that can be changed, files that can be added, things that can be deleted, and that's what we want you to do. We want to empower you to make these connections and do more with your ideas and information. So I'd like to thank you all for joining today's session and remind you to stop searching and start finding your information and get going on your visual file management with the brain. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks.